Hello and a very good afternoon. I am Basundhara from Logistics Insider, and I welcome you all to yet another episode of In Conversation with, where we will be interviewing a very special guest. Security and safety are now the buzzwords for every industry, and the recent circumstances have put the spotlight on cargo security like no other. Cargo theft continues to be a growing issue that is echoing across different corners of the globe. No matter how the goods are being transported, cargo shipments remain vulnerable to theft, thereby putting ports, trucks, and warehouses all at risk. Cargo security is certainly important for more reasons than one, but primarily, cargo security is that critical part of the supply chain process that cannot be compromised under any circumstance. It is now more important than ever to reduce the risks and improve security measures to keep goods safe by utilizing finely tuned practices and the very best of technology. And excess security solutions are now emerging as a beacon of hope in this regard. To talk more about it, we have with us today Mr. Baxi Samyak Sinha, National Sales Manager of ABLOY India.
Yeah, thanks, Vasundhara. I think, you have already set the agenda that we'll be discussing about.
Right.
Yeah. So, and, how do you want to proceed? We'll start.
Yes, before we start, here's a brief bio of Mr. Sinha. So, an experienced leader with a dedicated history of working in various aspects of the supply chain, Mr. Sinha is responsible for driving business development and sales for Abloy India in the SARC region. While working in the electronic and security industry for more than 12 years, he has dealt with different sectors and verticals, transportation and logistics being one of them. Through these years of close association with the industry, he has utilized his knowledge and, of course, his expertise towards achieving tranquil operations and has been driving the need for security upgrades and technology for safer and more secure operations. He is also associated with various committees and forums on technology and security. We are really pleased to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you,
So,
Vasundhara. It's a pleasure being here.
Indeed. So before we start, I'd also like to inform our viewers that we'll be taking a few questions from the comment section as well. So feel free to share your questions with Mr. Sinha. So starting off with the theme of our conversation today, safe transit of cargo is a prerequisite for a smooth supply chain. What are the challenges that you face in ensuring safe transportation of cargo?
Vasundhara, when we talk of cargo transportation, we first need to understand that we use multiple modes of cargo transportation at different levels.
Right.
Say, like cargo transportation by air, sea, rail, and road. Now, these are the more the four prominent ones. Now, all modes of transportation have their own different ways of operation, their SOPs and guidelines. Based on these operational procedures and available infrastructure, they have very specific concerns and challenges with each one of them. Well, however, there are some challenges that are common to all, which we can identify that it's pretty much there with whatever mode of transportation that we use. And some of these common challenges that we could figure out was things like transportation delays, pilferage, theft, cargo handling, etc. Now, the extent of these issues varies depending on how the cargo transportation happens in different sectors. Now, when we talk of security, safety and security of cargo while in transit, that is really, when in transit, which means that while the cargo is moved from point A to point B, the challenges are a lot more prominent in cargo movement by road. Now, air, sea, and rail transportation of cargo is largely monitored and happens under relatively stringent operational guidelines compared to the road movement. Human interferences or tampering is also very difficult while the cargo is on move by air, sea, or rail. But in case of road transportation, access to cargo is comparatively easy, and possibilities of human interferences are high. And there's a lack of standardized security infrastructure and monitoring that we have experienced in the last couple of years. What I mean by a standardized infrastructure is that it's not driven by a standard policy for deploying a sort of a standard mechanism for cargo transportation by road. Now, according to the data published by few independent agencies who carried out research to assess the extent of theft and pilferage during cargo movement, it was found that road transportation accounts for nearly 47% of thefts and pilferage, while air, sea, and rail combined accounts for just about 5%. Now, this is for cargo in transit, while thefts and pilferages from warehouse and storage facilities account for nearly 49%. So when we talk about these sort of security issues, it has to be looked at from both sides, where transportation is one side of it, and storage and warehousing is also one part of the entire supply chain process. The other big challenge, which probably is not related to security but is very important, is the operational efficiency part. We know that India, being a very highly competitive and price sensitive market, uh, because of which cargo transporters are somewhat hesitant, a little reluctant to infrastructure and technology upgrades, because it requires a substantial investment. So that is another reason why we see the infrastructure on this side not being developed to the extent that it should have.
Absolutely. And also the point that you mentioned about cost efficiency, that is indeed preventing a lot of people from sort of investing in proper infrastructure to cater to this issue. So
Absolutely.
coming to the innovations part, what are the innovative solutions that you have put in place to address these very challenges that arise, especially in terms of in the last mile delivery?
Okay, there are many solutions that have been developed and tested over the years, ranging from, say, indigenously developed and improvised mechanisms to meet a very basic local requirement, starting from there to very advanced technology-driven solutions. Cargo transporter today are using monitoring and control devices and solutions like access control, vehicle tracking, personnel and fleet management, telematics, data analysis. Just some of these things that are already being used. However, due to lack of standardization and varying operational requirements, these solutions are very fragmented, and it's basically to suit the operation and budget of a specific cargo operator. So it's not in a way that these are some standardized solutions that can be used across the board. Now, while some solutions have been found to be effective over a wider area of application, for others the application has been very limited or local due to various factors, including lack of a defined standard, as I talked about before this. It is very difficult to say that one solution is absolute and works for everyone. So, but we are constantly working to develop solutions that would have wider applications, can be used for a larger user base. Say, for example, there's something we use as an identity management. Now, identity management has been an area of concern for nearly all last mile delivery providers to ensure that the right person has access to cargo. We are developing solutions with a two-step identity and location verification before you gain access to cargo. So this is something that is easier to adapt and deploy over a wider user base, as the application sits on cloud and entire process from identification to access is automated. This is relatively new technology that addresses an area of concern on a larger scale. Now, contrary to this, another major concern over the years has been of real-time notification and alerts, where a lot of different solution providers have developed various platforms. Related technologies like CCTV, access control, wireless connectivity, sensor inputs, onboard communication. These have been around for more than a decade. But we're yet to develop a robust and seamless integrated platform for wider acceptance. Now, this is largely due to technical and connectivity and cost limitations that we have with these devices. So their application till date is very limited to places and areas where a very specific issue is to be addressed.
Indeed, that is really heartening to know, and to know that ABLOY is making strides in that regard. Speaking of the company, it is known for the safe transportation of high valued goods. And my next question is premised on that. So, transportation of cargo is itself a paramount responsibility. But speaking of precious cargo or high valued goods, what are the hurdles and risks associated with the transportation of high valued cargo that you encounter?
Well, there certainly is more emphasis on security of high value cargo, obviously, due to the nature of cargo that is being transported. But even with increased security, high value cargo transportation has its own challenges. Something to name a few, say, risk to human life, hijacking, armed robberies. These are some of the instances that are more associated to high value cargo transportation, obviously, because we understand that the nature of goods that is being transported is of quite a high value. So now, though one can never be completely prepared to counter such sort of risks, because they are these are some risks where you cannot really preempt on how and what will unfold. But in order to mitigate the risk factor, involvement of law enforcement agencies and administration is very seriously desired. Even with increased security, the risks involved in transportation of high value cargo is significant. Technologies like coding and marking of precious cargo, discrete tracking devices. Now, these are some things that have helped bring down the incidences to some extent. But and that is also largely because reselling of such high value or restricted goods have become difficult. But even then, the hurdle remains as incidents related to movement of precious cargo is more brazen and dangerous. So, given the kind of value that they carry, the attacks or the dangers associated to these kind of thefts are much more higher compared to the normal cargo that is being transported.
Absolutely. More the stakes and more are the dangers associated with it. But and talking about technology, you've also mentioned in one of your previous response, which I would also like to highlight and share with the viewers. How are you deploying technology to resolve security issues in supply chain logistics and the warehousing, the entire ecosystem?
Okay, we have to understand it on a slightly broader perspective. Now, technology is a subject of constant upgrade. Now, technology is not something that you can deploy today and forget about it. So, technology is something which keeps updating on a very constant, in a very constant manner. What is new today may be obsolete in, say, about 4 to 5 years. Now, one must understand that there is no technology which is absolutely future proof. Now, when I say future proof, I mean that there's no technology that can be guaranteed to last for a very long time. So every technology has to undergo certain upgrades. Now, there will obviously, certainly be better technology tomorrow than what it is available today. Uh, a very good example, if I can, just put up an example here. When we started out, when we are young, we used to buy music on a tape. If people would remember that music was something that we bought as cassettes, as tapes. Then came the CDs and DVDs, where we saw that it's a huge advancement. And from there, we moved on to USBs and music storage devices like iPod. Now today, we are in a world where music is largely about live streaming. Nobody uses any of these devices or any of these, say, sort of tapes or CDs or DVDs. You would hardly get a DVD player these days. Now, even iPod, which was supposed to be one of the greatest inventions of our time and related to music, who would have thought that something like an iPod could become obsolete? So now you've got to understand that this is how technology evolves, and we develop solutions that can be easily upgraded and can be in sync with the best available technology. Our endeavor is to deploy solutions that reduces human intervention, that can be remotely controlled and monitored and operated as well. At ABLOY, we aim to provide more transparency in operation, to make process more efficient by gathering data inputs and to preempt a breach or threat. Now, by using such solutions and processes, we are looking to resolve most of the security related issues. However, both threats and solutions keep evolving. So, the way you address a threat in a similar fashion over a period of time, even the threat changes from one form to the other. So it's a constant drive to upgrade and better the offering using latest technology. So that's how the technology evolution goes on.
Indeed, very brilliantly put there. So, talking about the year that has gone, the bygone year, with the unprecedented events and circumstances that have unfolded, it has also put the spotlight on healthcare like never before. But apart from the importance of drugs and vaccines, a topic that is very less discussed is the safe transit of drugs. How do you address that?
Okay, drugs and vaccines again. These also fall in the category of restricted and high value cargo. So although we have not witnessed drug transportation as a separate topic of discussion yet, but as you said, that it's something which is becoming very pertinent and very important to address these days. Uh, we know that okay, there are certain standards and guidelines that do exist when it comes to transportation of such items like drugs and vaccines, largely driven by government policies. Say, for example, availability of cold chain, temperature controlled vehicles, specified operating environment. These all these things make drug or sort of vaccine transportation a very specialized job. Drug transportation is covered using the same security apparatus that we deploy for high value cargo. So, if we have to relate in terms of real security that while which is being used while transporting drugs and vaccines, it's of the same level that we normally associate with a high value cargo. Uh, However, the research data that we have gone through over a couple of years that suggests that drugs are really not as lucrative as a commodity for pilferage and theft, uh, as compared to other items which are more like perishables, consumer goods, electronics, or even alcohol and tobacco. Now, this largely stems from the fact that reselling of drugs or vaccines is not as easy as the other commodities. So, when you pilfer or when you steal other commodities, much easier to sell out in the gray market. Whereas it's not the same for drugs and vaccines. Again, this now, when we talk about why this happens is because there are many punitive provisions for buyers in this case. It's not only for sellers that something has been stolen and it's being sold off to somebody else. Even for the buyers who are buying drugs or vaccines from the gray market, the administrative policies are very stringent. There are laws and checks and balances in place which make sure that such transactions don't happen. So in this case, even the buyer prefers to source drugs from a legitimate place. They would not really go out to a gray market to buy drugs and vaccines which has been stolen because there's no authenticity to such products. So because of this, the factor that theft of such drugs and vaccines is still less. But yes, considering that in the given days, this is something which has become a very important factor. Some sort of pilferage, some sort of theft is certainly there, and a very good case is when we see the COVID vaccine rollout happening. You would realize that the cargo transportation of COVID vaccines, this is largely helped by the government, by the administration at large, to give a proper protection to these containers that are carrying COVID vaccines. So this is some sort of an arrangement that would also be looking at when it comes to high value cargo transportation. But yes, technology, of course, is and will be a major part of securing the entire transportation chain. So that will always be there.
Indeed. And do you have you noticed any upsurge in the demand for drug security in the post-pandemic world? Have you seen the demand grow more than in the past few years? I think you're on mute. You're still on mute.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Am I audible now? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it happens.
So what I was saying is that if we talk about the post-pandemic world, we are still in a recovery stage. Now, we're not yet to a point where business has normalized to 100%. Uh, Now, the vaccine rollout is something that has been the primary area of importance. Now, the other sort of drug transportation is something that has been happening even before and will continue to happen. So, as on date, if I have to talk about any serious changes in terms of drug transportation, that is something which is not yet visible. But yes, considering the fact that this pandemic after effect will stay for a much longer time, much longer than what people expected it to be. So yes, going ahead in future, we are certainly looking at this vertical as one of the verticals where security would be a paramount concern. So yes, of course, now we understand that we treat them as a restricted and a high value item. So the kind of security apparatus that is required would largely remain the same as to what we provide for other high value goods. So yes, there's in terms of specific business case. Yes, we have not had any specific business case as yet, but yes, I think we going ahead. This is something that would be talked about a lot more than what is being done today. So we should certainly be looking at this as one of the very important verticals.
Of course. We'll take a few questions from the comment section because I see some. Here's a question by Mr. Gaurav Dubey from Logistics Insider. His question is, in terms of value, how much cargo in transit is lost in a year in India, and how much is lost globally? If you can provide insights on that.
Okay. Again, in terms of value, there's no accurate number which has been assessed so far. There are a lot of companies where the value may not be as high as compared to the intangible damages that is happening. Say, for example, when you talk of something like consumables and perishables, the value of the items which get stolen or the theft that happens may not be that high compared to what we discussed in terms of a high value goods or something like gold or other metals that are being transported. But yes, if we have to assess the total losses, it would run, you know, it would differ from one sector to the other. Say, if I talk about, say, loss of petroleum products while in transit, there the value of the losses are much higher compared to the usual perishable cargo item. So far we haven't seen any specific value attached to it. We don't have an accurate data on how much would the value be, but the general assessment is that it may range anywhere between say about 8 to 10% of the total value of the items that go towards theft and pilferage.
Indeed, very well articulated. So, another question from Mr. Tariq Ahmed. With so much technology around smart locks, how do we decide who to trust and how much to trust them? What is your opinion on
Okay, I think trust is something that is built over a period of time. Now, trust is not something that you can really associate to somebody just like that. It takes a little time to trust somebody or some product or some brand or any of the organizations. Where we come in as ABLOY, and where we say that we are different from anybody else, is that ABLOY has been in the market for more than 100 years. We are a very old company, and we have been delivering security locking solutions for all these years. We have seen a lot of other companies scale down operations, fold up, and probably change from one product categories to others. But Abloy has sustained all that years of changes, all those years of evolution that has gone in. So when it comes to trust, I think the most important part that a customer should see is to get associated with any service provider or any company or any product or any solution that has a verifiable history of offering, which has been there for some time, and it has been providing a say sort of a sustainable solution to its customers. So that is something which will matter, because when we talk of security products or security solutions, now these are not something which are a one-off solution where you just deploy it and use it for another 1 or 2 years and you think of changing it. It's something which goes on for long term. So that association with that brand, that company has to be there for the time it's in use. So I think to trust a brand which has been there, which has already done the work, which has been pioneers in the field of security, these are some things which needs to be considered while you're considering which brand to go for.
Absolutely, very brilliantly put. There's another question here, which please feel free to take it in if it is relevant. It's by Mr. Sandeep Kumar. His question is how are wrecking solutions implementing in cargo segments?
Sorry, I didn't get that. How are
Racking solutions being implemented in cargo segments? I believe that is what he wanted to ask.
you're talking about a racking solution?
Racking solutions. I think it's
Okay.
pertaining to industrial shelving and racking solutions.
Yes. Exactly. So now what happens is when we are talking about cargo movement, it entirely depends on the kind of cargo movement that we are doing. Tracking solutions is something that we have seen more for the warehousing side, where it's not really been developed for the cargo transportation segment as such. There has been a lot of advancement in terms of racking, in terms of automation when we talk about the facilities and warehousing part. But racking again is something that we have been considering, or if not in entirety, at least a part of it is something that we have been considering and discussing with cargo operators. Primarily because it gives you a better, I would say, a better security apparatus inside the vehicle. Now, what normally happens is that if you see the logistics vehicles, or if you see the cargo movement, how it happens is that inside the cargo containers, you have goods which are just stacked up, and it's locked from outside. So anybody who has access to the main door pretty much has access to anything, whatever is inside it. Now, this is something which changes, the structure changes for movement of high value goods. Now, when we move a high value good, what we do is that, there are different containers which have been locked separately inside the main container. So the access to those points become all the more difficult. Now, this is something that we have had a look in the past, and we are also looking for solutions where we can put up a similar sort of a racking solution inside a moving vehicle, wherein the locking can also happen at a local level, where the racks independently can be logged and probably can be monitored and secured. So that actually gives you a sort of a double security, where even if you open the main door, you still have to get inside the vehicle and open these things up. So in India, we have seen that a lot of these cargo thefts happen while your truck or your vehicle is on the move. Now, this is a situation which I think is very peculiar, because When the truck is standing, it's much easier to break in. But what people do is that they'll jump onto the truck from behind while the truck is moving, and then open the main door or somehow bypass the security of the main door, open the main door and just take things out and throw it out. Now, this is something that can be curtailed if we have a proper locking solution through the locking mechanism. Now, this is where a person will have to get inside the container and then get into the vehicle and break open everything else inside and then take out things, which takes a lot of time and effort. So certainly, racking solutions has a very good potential when it comes to cargo transportation, in general, and this is something that I essentially believe it should be considered. Probably we can develop it, in a more secure way.
Thank you for such a detailed insight and for walking us through what goes on inside it. I believe that very aptly answers this question. So, talking about ABLOY's strategy, how do you help your customers stay more competitive without ever compromising on the safety of both their cargo and their person?
Okay, I think I would take some cues from what we discussed, in the question before that. That how would you trust, a solution provider or a brand?
Right.
Now, when I talk about a customer, now trust becomes a very integral part of the entire solution process, and trust is what ABLOY stands for, and it reflects in everything that we do. It is imperative that our customers trust us for what we do, and to make sure of that, ABLOY is committed to develop the highest quality of products and solutions. Our involvement with the customer starts from a very early stage where we start conceptualizing on a particular solution or a product or a design, and it continues from there till for a quite long time. It doesn't end by where we say that okay, we've supplied your solution and that is where the association ends. This because we consider ourselves as partners and not vendors who are just selling a specific solution to a client. Now, what we do is that we work together to make sure that the solutions work as is desired, and that it undergoes the upgrades and customizations that may be needed. Now, this is very important because you've got to understand that every customer or every vertical may have a different requirement. So you cannot have one product fit all kind of a solution where you can say that okay, I have developed something which addresses everybody's needs. So this is where we come in and we work with the customers. We understand what are the challenges, and we work together as partners to develop these solutions. Now, that it a very important thing again for uncompromised security is continuity and consistency. Now, security cannot be a stopgap arrangement. We've got to understand that it must be continuous. So you cannot have a security apparatus that works for a certain period of time and then it doesn't work, and then you change to something else and then it starts working. So you cannot have that kind of an arrangement. It has to be a continuous arrangement. And at ABLOY, we ensure that our continuous involvement with customers to make sure that personnel and assets remain secure tomorrow as they are today. So now it's very important that when I'm talking of tomorrow, I'm starting today talking of tomorrow, I need to be there tomorrow. So that is where, again, when we answered the previous question that how to trust a brand, this sort of assessment of a brand or a product or a solution is very important. Now, our solutions are basically technological advancements aimed at problem solving rather than product delivery. So longevity and sustainability are something which is synonymous with ABLOY solutions. This helps our customers stay competitive without compromising on the safety and security, because it's a continuous process of involvement that we traverse together. And as I said, that ABLOY has a history. It's an organization that has been there for more than 100 years. And our customers know that we are dependable and that we will drive the change that they need. So that's how ABLOY engages with the customer over a longer period to make sure that they stay competitive and they stay secure.
Indeed. So it won't be wrong to say that consistency, close involvement with the customers, and longevity of solutions is helping ABLOY drive the change.
Absolutely,
and I
absolutely.
hope it continues over the years. And speaking of that, let me come to the next question as we head towards the end of the interview. Um, Innovation has always been at the heart of Abloy's operations. That having said, does the company intend on rolling out any new services or any innovative service or technology in the coming days?
Well, yes, of course. Innovation is something which is ABLOY's core philosophy. Innovation has been pretty much at the heart of everything that we do. So we continuously develop and upgrade our solution offering. If you track ABLOY's solution offering over the last decade or so, you'll realize that we have introduced many technologies that were first in the segment. Say, for example, we were first one to incorporate a wireless access control in locks and keys. Now, this is something which was unheard of before ABLOY actually did it. We introduced the highest level of digital encryption in our solution. Now, again, when people were struggling with an encrypted channel for communication, ABLOY was already there delivering, and to make sure that we are more secure than anybody else. Now we have moved towards a more advanced technology incorporation in our solutions. Now, talking of which, we will soon be offering digital keys instead of physical keys. Now that's again one of very important milestone when we talk of technology evolution. So right now, people see keys as something which is physical, which you have to carry around and always keep in your pocket to open a lock. Whether it's an electronic or mechanical or whichever sort of, but there has to be a physical key. Now, ABLOY is moving towards a digital key where the key practically does not exist. So you can have access to locking points without the keys. It basically moves around in your phone or through an application. So these are something, some innovations, some technological advancement that are already underway. And all this comes with the idea of evolving ourselves to solve security issues today and in future. Now, it's very important that we look at the future as to what would be the technology in future. What is it that can help us better our solution offering? What are the technologies that we can work on to make it more secure? So all of these things is something that is constantly being looked at. ABLOY, our R&D team is something which works towards a continuous product development. So it's a very continuous process. There's something that keeps happening at ABLOY. It's like a daily routine for us. So it's not that when there's a need or there's a requirement from the market, that's when we go and assess that, okay, what is needed and what is not. It's something that we drive by ourselves. So similarly, there are many other innovations and upgrades that are in pipeline and will be soon available to our customers.
Definitely, and we look forward to more of such solutions in the coming days. Taking another question from the comment section. This is by Mr. Sunish Chukat. Do you think high investment in security features is a vital factor which pulls LSPs back in implementing security features?
Well, yes, I think this is something that I discussed before as well. When you talk about any technology, you've got to understand when the technology is new and before it is adapted by a wider audience. At that time, that technology or the cost of acquisition of technology or that kind of a solution is always high. And this is something, cost has been a huge factor in our markets. It's a very competitive market, I would say. So depending on the kind of profits that are being driven by these companies or the cargo transporters, everything boils down to a part where cost becomes a very important factor. Now we are working, in some ways where we can try to lessen this burden directly to the cargo transporters and probably offer sort of an OPEX solution where it can be carried on for a longer period. But that is something which needs to be seen on how it develops over the time. But yes, certainly cost is one factor which actually pulls back a lot of our cargo transporters from actually deploying these kind of high-end solutions.
Absolutely. Speaking of the company, ABLOY has spanned a history of a commendable 110 years. With that in mind, where do you see your company in the next 5 years?
Well, I think we've been growing as a company. We've been growing, even in terms of our solutions offering. We've been helping verticals and customers that were not in our were not our focus areas. Maybe about say 10, 15 years ago. So certainly, in talking of the next 5 years, Abloy would be a very important part of the solution offering in the critical infrastructure industry. Now, critical infrastructure again is one vertical which is very important to keep any country's economy running. So the idea is that when we come in with a solution offering, it's not limited only to one specific vertical or one specific customer segment. But at the same time, as I said, that one product fit all kind of a solution does not work. So Abloy has been working and has been developing customer specific or say segment specific or vertical specific solutions. So that is something that we have been doing and will continue to do so in future as well. So in the next 5 years, probably we'll see Abloy coming out with more such vertical specific solutions to meet the exact requirements of specific verticals rather than trying to address a larger segment of customers at one go. So that sort of a customization is something that would certainly happen, and we would obviously have posted very healthy growth over the last all the years that Apple has been in operation, and we plan to continue doing that for the next 5 years as well.
Indeed, it won't be again wrong to say that ABLOY has definitely made the transition happen from the one size fit all concept to tailored solutions and vertical specific solutions. And I wish you all the best in the endeavor to even take the company to greater heights. Before we wind up the interview, there's another question if you would like to take. It's by Mr. Sandeep Kumar again. His
Mhm.
question is: Can implementation of innovation increase the cost of cargo? Although you've covered a bit about cost effectiveness in the previous answers.
Okay. Now, one thing that we would have to understand that when we talk of innovation, now innovation is not something we have to differentiate innovation from an invention. Invention is something where I'm creating something absolutely new, which has not been seen or which has not existed. Now, that is something which becomes more expensive when something has been created for the first time. Innovation is something which is a constant development of something which is already existing. So our focus has been more on innovation in a way that there are certain things that we have observed works in the market. There are certain things that we have seen that does not work. Banking on that kind of an expertise or kind of scenario that we have seen over the years. For us, what makes sense is that we continue developing the some part of the existing products and keep upgrading it to make it better than what it was yesterday. So yes, in terms of if I talk purely in terms of cost, it certainly becomes more expensive. Obviously, when you deploy any expensive solution or there's additional cost that goes in, eventually goes on adding up to the cost of the cargo. Of course, that would happen. But then you've also got to look at the fact that these innovations are something which are constant and will keep upgrading. So when we talk of upgrades and innovations, the cost is much lesser compared to deploying something which is absolutely new, a new technology, or adapting a new technology completely. So that is where the focus has been that we should be able to control the cost for our customers in certain ways, and that's something that we have been working on.
Indeed, wonderful insights. And with that, we come to the end of today's session. So as we approach the end of today's discussion, I would once again want to thank Mr. Sinha for this informative session. Cargo security is indeed the key word of 2021 for the industry, and I'm certain that the valuable insights that you've just shared will help in maintaining will surely benefit a lot of our viewers who have been keen on understanding how the entire prospect of access solutions can pave the way for safer cargo. So thank you, sir, for
Thank you,
taking the time
Vasudha.
out of your
Yeah,
busy
thank
schedule.
you.
I look
Thanks
forward
for
to
getting me here. It's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure.
indeed. And I would also like to extend my gratitude to the viewers for their inquisitive questions and for your for being a part of the discussion. With this, we take our leave. Thank you once again, and have a lovely day ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.